Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. It is 6:10 in the morning. I'm recording this video late because stream ran very long. Two things. Number one, this video is going to have Sims for embellishments heading into patch 10.2. I ran them tonight. Number two, we broke Time Dilation, the embellishment, which we'll talk about that. It builds upon the Sims. I think broke is an okay word to use for that on stream today. This looks pretty wild. Might not last. I don't know. I was meaning about deleting the VOD, but it's already known at this point. We'll see what happens, but it is pretty crazy. So we'll look at embellishments and then get into that stuff later on in the video. It's not even that complicated. You just basically play it, but it might have implications on 10.2, the race and everything. And yeah, we will see where it goes. So it's late. I'm hungry. Let's just get into the Sims. Alrighty. So getting into the embellishment Sims here. Now, we're going to hit on a few things here. I'm going to explain why I think Spore Cloak is best, even though it's not technically, at the top of the meters here or top of the Sims, whatever. I sim the same gear for every profile. Everything has a socket in it for like max lariat value, all of that. You can see, I mean, lariat is actually looking decent here, but this is also with full socket value. 3 in your neck if you're playing lariat, also the same. Helm, 2 rings, bracers, and I think that's it, right? But they're all socketed. Is it going to happen super early on in 10.2? No. So keep in mind, lariat not as good as it may seem here until you get max gems. I have to sim it like on a case-by-case basis whenever the patch comes out and depending on your own gear, right? Now, so I'm also playing Balefire and Pips across the board here. The raw numbers for like overall DPS for each spec, don't really worry about it much. It's more just like what embellishments sim the best here. So off the bat for Affliction, we have basically we have the I forgot what it's called, the mastery thing. 90% health, silken blue amethyst or something like that, lining, I think. I simmed this at 70% uptime. It is still lower than that in, like, I'd say heavier progression-based settings. I found the top logs playing the embellishment on Sarkareth for an Evoker and a Warlock. The uptime was 45% for both of them. It is very, very low in harder hitting prog-based settings. Earlier stuff, Kazara and stuff, maybe equal to that, whatever is happening in 10.2, probably not that low. But in harder end tier bosses, Smolderon, Tindraw, Fyrak, good luck having 70%. So this has been sim bait for a long time. Not terrible. Mastery effects, stat-based effects like this, like Lariat, do scale better in AoE comparatively to, like, Shadow Flame. But keep in mind, once again, decent bit of sim bait in this, right? Shadow Flame also simming pretty high. Thing with Shadow Flame is it is pure single target based, no AoE applicability and like that. So there's that. Now the highest simming thing overall here, basically sitting here, right below it, you have Spore Cloak, which is changed in patch 10.2. They've added a flat verse effect, like bonus to the equip when you're above 70% health, which is both damage reduction and damage increase, right? So Spore Cloak, damage increase now. They've cut the shield absorb on the second part of it in half, though, if it procs. It's like 440k whatever at 486, or it would be at least if they didn't nerf it. Now it's 207, but you have a baseline verse equip effect in the first half of it. Overall, Spore Cloak, very strong for prog. Damage increase from the verse, damage reduction from the verse, heals you passively, and also if it procs, you get a large shield absorb on you, once every 10 minutes, once every 2 minutes basically. So pretty strong overall in a prog-based setting in a world where there is a 31 DPS difference between it and playing a mastery bait embellishment. We're playing this all day, every day. Also, margin of error, 76 DPS. Also, on top of that, you have mastery here. Once again, bait, so not as high as it seems here. Third highest is going to be Azure Weave from what I've seen running my own Sims. Now, the note here, like these two, also a little bit of bait, like sort of how mastery and Shadow Flame are, because it takes 2 sparks to make double 486 Azure Weave. I think I simmed 1 and 1. Yeah, 1 at 486, 1 lower. Not the best. So long term, maybe. Short term in the patch, likely not very good. Number 4 here, we have Spore Cloak and Lariat. Once again, this is a full gem sim for Lariat. You'll have less gems early on, obviously, get a new gear. Have to sim it on your own, but I wouldn't really look at a Lariat super early on unless like you get lucky with gems, all that kind of stuff, or whatever happens, but there's that. So sort of, I'd say in a sense, all these are bait within reason. Bait for these being like Lariat based and like, mastery based, and this being double bait. Next up, we have Spore Cloak and Shadow Flame. So once again, pure single target. If you're doing that, Shadow Flame's fine. It was nerfed. Still okay-ish, I guess, but it has been nerfed. It shows how subpar 10.2 embellishments are. Haven't even seen one yet at this point. Not great, not terrible. but like pure single target based. If you move down one here, you have Shadow Flame again being paired with double Shadow Flame. So 2 and 2. Wouldn't play this. Very little AoE applicability, all that kind of stuff. Well, you know, is what it is. You've got Spore Cloak, and this is the first 10.2 one. This is the second crit one above 70%, sitting right here. Not great. A bit of a loss from like the highest sim here, obviously, most of them being bait. Here is crit and Shadow Flame. Here is Spore Cloak and allied risk guards of Time Dilation. Time Dilation, it will not reflect the buff that it gives to your surrounding allies. At the same time, there is a very low uptime on this in Sims. I think it's around 25% roughly in Sims. We'll look at that in a minute here as to why it can be much higher. But only one buff on you in Sims here. No stacking buffs, keep that in mind, and a lower uptime, a lowish uptime. So honestly, like AF, the combination of Spore Cloak and Time Dilation is actually the lowest for AF compared to like Demo and Destro. Looking at Demo here, I mean, you've got a mix of like Azure Weave being number 1, but also like, you know, higher 2 sparks, higher eye level, all that. Lariat, but once again, max gems, Spore Cloak, Mastery, bait, Spore Cloak, Shadow Flame, bait, no Spore Cloak in general, bait. And then right here, you've got Spore Cloak and Time Dilation. Not as big of a disparity here for Demonology being 1400 compared to AF being, you know, basically, you know, right around 2k, give or take disparity wise here, right? Destruction, sort of similar. Spore Cloak, you've got Shadow Flame, Lariat, Spore Cloak, so bait, all this. You're going to play a Spore Cloak in Prog, right? Then you've got Spore Cloak, Time Dilation here, behind by about 2k, but once again, mostly bait in front of these, right? Like the Mastery effect is not going to be this high. I sim at 70% in Sims, but it's not going to be as high in actuality in harder base fights. Shadow Flame, if you're in a pure patchwork setting, Shadow Flame can be okay, but I wouldn't mind some AoE reach, all that kind of stuff. And once again, when it comes to Time Dilation, this is only buffing you in this sim, no allies buffing you. It gives you a 25% uptime, I believe, roughly on the buff, and only one iteration of it. No stacking verse buff, no stacking verse buffs, right? So like, while this might be lower than it's like, you know, compared to the overall Sims here, a lot of them are bait with Shadow Flame, Lariat bait, Mastery bait, no Spore Cloak bait, or just like, you know, a bit awkward in general, right? I think one of the best combinations you can play is likely Spore Cloak and Time Dilation. I wouldn't fault you for playing Spore Cloak and Shadow Flame if you were in single target settings, just want to play it. I think the number one way to look at this right now is that Spore Cloak is certainly a lock when it comes to like a good early craft or upgrade, but number 2 might flex a little bit. And we'll get into that in a little bit here when we look at Time Dilation things. So now, also quickly, Trinket Sims. I didn't talk about these, but I ran them quickly, very fast here. So trinkets for Demonology here. I ran them a few days ago in the video. Want to talk about them here quickly as well. I added a few more in. These are all max eye level from Mythic or max upgrade level from like Mythic Plus farming and all that. It's still spoilers ahead for every spec. Boloros and Naimu everywhere. For Demonology, you actually have Mirror not being too bad with Boloros. You have Mirror with Boloros here as well. Just different slots here, same thing basically. Balefire not being terrible with Boloros. Pips and Naimu not being terrible. All that. For the most part, I mean, it's dominated by Boloros and Naimu. Naimu is going to be your best on-use stat-based trinket across the board. Boloros is going to be your best, like, even though it is an on-use trinket, it's just a damage effect. You can pop it whenever for the most part, right? It's sort of a on-use trinket, but more or less like just a passive, you know, hit it when you can kind of thing. But you'll see across all these that it's like Balefire for Demo being okay for AF, but overall, like Naimu is going to be your best option basically in every setting. Pips not being bad for the equip-based trinkets, and Mirror being okay as well. Moving on to Affliction here. You see at the top here, once again, Naimu and Boloros, unsurprisingly. Balefire, Boloros, Mirror, Boloros, Balefire, Naimu, which is interesting. Double equip. Wouldn't play that, but it's odd. Then you have Naimu and Pip. You have a mix of like Boloros and Pip. Some other double on use, which is odd here as well. And, well, you know, that's sort of that. Now, there is, if you go down a bit more here, Coagulated Genosaur Blood, which is from Everbloom. Not a great trinket for Affliction, but for Destruction, unsurprisingly, these two, number 1 and 2, obviously, but it's not terrible for Destro. If you can obtain, you know, an early Boloros or an early Naimu, like this is your best equip-based option outside of Pips, essentially. And Pips is like good with Beloros, but outside of that, I mean, like it's about the same with, you know, Naimu compared to Venusaur Blood. This is from Everbloom at 483. Baseline intellect with crit effect on it. Besides that, you've got Balefire, Beloros, you've got, I guess, other mixes of, you know, Beloros, Mirror, and all that kind of stuff. And this will also vary if you play 2-minute build versus 3-minute build. I'm playing 2 in this, so 3-minute build likely adds more value to Mirror. This is semi-high as well. I don't think it's very good. It's from the final boss in the raid. It's RNG, not very exciting. But for both Destruction, even Demonology, looking at it a little bit, Coagulated Venusaur Blood is actually not terrible. And with that and like Balefire being infinitely farmable from plus over and over versus like, you know, Naimu and Pips and Beloros being once a week per difficulty, you might be looking at targeting like Balefire, Coagulated early on outside of the raid, trying to farm more gear up. So for the most part, we talked about in the video, not a whole lot really changed there a few days ago, but Coagulated gained some ground. Let's look a little bit more at Time Dilation in action here. This is actually pretty insane. All right, Time Dilation. So once again in Sims, it buffs you and your 4 closest allies within 30 yards for 10 seconds, increasing your verse by 552 at this eye level. It's like 370 at like 447 roughly, give or take. You can stock at these if you want. The big thing here, Sims only have, I think, like a 25-ish percent uptime on the buff and only 1 stack of it. It's 6:30 in the morning. I'm just going to be a little lazy here and show you the video that I recorded. I'm not going to dub it over because I'm, well, tired. So we put a group together, went into an instance. So there's like instance-based content rules applying. We're all playing Time Dilation here. We're all playing it. When we were in Valdrakken, there was a split of Alliance and Horde in this group, so we didn't have like stacking buffs as much. We saw a stack of 2 Time Dilation buffs at once, but in instance-based content, there are no faction restrictions or anything, and it is pretty wild. So I'm just gonna skip ahead a little bit here. When do we open up? About here. Watch my buffs. It's a little, this is Time Dilation. There's one. So it procced once. All 5 of us are wearing it. So if one procs, it'll proc for everybody, right? There's one. Give it a second or two here. Don't worry. It falls. And not the end of the world. It is what it is. There's 1. There's 2. And where's number 3? There it is. So we rolled a 3 stack for a pretty good bit of time here. And they also can refresh one another. Like not if you can see right here, if one person procs again from their own instance of Time Dilation, it'll refresh the buff. It doesn't stack twice for one person, but it'll refresh the buff. You can see my verse like right about here roughly. We didn't get 4 stacks in this video. We did it one more time and got a 4 stack in this video. This is also 371 verse at 447. This is retail, not PTR. So you're looking at basically, I'd say about 200 more verse. That smile. About 200 more verse per stack at 486. And I'm at 17% verse at 3 stacks here. I've had 4. You're looking at 22-ish percent verse, 22 and like 11. It's pretty wild. If your entire raid is wearing this, or a large portion of it is, and you're stacking this buff, this is a large damage reduction effect on your raid or your party, depending on what it's proccing on. 1, 2, 3, as you can see right there, just rolling, and also a pretty large damage increase. This paired with Spore Cloak, this is like double Vantage Runes, right? I think something like that. This paired with Spore Cloak is likely going to be a very large DR if it works out. It may not. This is instance-based content. We're all stacked here, but at the same time, keep in mind, like it's a 30-yard radius. In a raid setting, you're not gonna have a perfect pixel stack on everybody. But if most of your raid is wearing this with a Spore Cloak, it brings a lot more survivability, a lot more throughput, a lot more of everything. I would say comparatively to just playing, Shadow Flame Embellishment or Mastery Embellishment or whatever. Right. Now I have some logs here. Let me see here. Where can I find this? Where is it at? I have a handful. Yes, this. So that 25% in Sims that I just showed you a minute ago. Well, it's actually 75%. At least it was for us in a 5-stat group, which was pixel stack. To be fair, we had a 74% uptime on Rally to Victory, which is the Time Dilation effect. Now you can see here, this is all of our individual. From what I understand, from what this looks like, this is all of our individual procs. I procced 3 times here, which gave this person coverage here. They procced a bunch here, which gave us coverage here. Vice versa, all that kind of stuff, which amounted to basically a permanent uptime of the buff for a good portion of the fight here. You zoom into the first minute and a half, it's 95% of time. 90%. And at the same time, this does not show 2 stacks, 3 stacks, 4 stacks of time dilation. It just shows 1 because the buff, it doesn't show multiple buffs. It's just like 1 effect overall. It's called Rally the Victory. It doesn't show if there's 1 stack, 2, 3, 4. We had a 3 stack rolling for a while here. We had 2 3 stacks. We had a 4 stack towards the end here in the next test we ran, right? It gets pretty wild. You can see in the applications here as well. I can find it here. Let's see. I don't know if this is even the right one. Let me see. Remove buff, refresh buff. I don't even know where it's at, but you can see individually, like, so I proc here and apply to him, 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 and him. Then he procs here and applies to himself, me, him, 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 right? This has happened multiple times where we have a 3 stack rolling or a 4 stack rolling. Right here, actually, yeah. So he procs, applies to group. He procs, applies to group. He actually refreshes his proc right here, so reapplies, maintaining the same, like, just refreshing the duration, right? And then he also procs here, applying to the group, and there's your 3 stack. This happened with a 4 stack as well. On PTR, at 486, that's like 2300 verse rolling. That's a lot of versatility. That's a crazy amount of verse. Is the RNG very high on that happening? Like the proc chance? No. We're pixel stacked here too. It's a 30-yard radius, though. If your whole raid is wearing this, or even a good portion of it, it looks to likely be pretty strong. This is actually the 4 stack here we had. So I think it was. Maybe this is the 4 stack. We'll see. I can't even tell at this point. Here, yeah, towards the end. You can see at the end here. So this is the 4 stack we had, right? We almost had 5. His buff fell. The Demon Hunter procced. He procced. And then I procced at the very end here for a 4 stack. We almost had 5, but it fell. RNG is RNG, but even though time dilation may not sim the highest in Sims, this is a great representation of why Sims are a great tool, whether it's for, you know, for varying things, whether it's, you know, like profiles like patchwork versus AoE, patchwork versus movement, whatever. It's a great example of like why they're a great tool to look at like baseline numbers and all that stuff, but you have to apply logic to them. You have to apply, okay, well, I'm going to be in a raid setting. This is only giving me a buff from myself with 1 stack at 22% uptime. That's not going to be the case likely in a raid setting. You're going to have a higher buff with multiple stacks possibly rolling at once. It's pretty crazy. They've nerfed older embellishments, Shadow Flame, Emissary of the Blue, Lariat, all that in previous patches. Going into new patches, they nerfed Shadow Flame. I think it's something else recently as well. It's still pretty good. I don't know their plans for time dilation. It might get nerfed, it might not. It's been around for a very long time, but no one's ever played it. Maybe it's because they didn't know this existed. Maybe it's because it was just bad. Maybe it's because 10.2 embellishments are bad. This is simming decently, so people are looking at it now. I don't know. But time dilation looks pretty crazy. At least to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it isn't that crazy, but when I see 25% in logs, then actually can pull 74 with multiple stacks happening, I get a little excited about it. So thanks for watching, guys. Wraps it up. Hopefully it clarifies that embellishments for you guys heading into patch 10.2. Things still may change, but support looks pretty good. Time dilation, once again, you can make a pair right now at 447 and socket it, as long as you don't upgrade it next season, like early on, like maybe week 1 or 2. Instead, do a sport cloak. It'll keep the socket around, looks decent, all that kind of stuff. Got to see where it goes. But yeah, overall, I think we're looking okay so far. The patch is close. I mean, BlizzCon's in a week. The patch is in like, I guess, 2 weeks, but things are rolling quickly. Embellishments, want to get it out to you guys. So if you're a sport cloak enjoyer, hey, awesome. And if you're not, well, you know, it is what it is. Maybe, you know, well, it is what it is. So let me know what you guys think about the time dilation stuff down below in the comment section. Is it going to last? Is it not? I'm curious to see what y'all think about it. I'm not sure if it's going to, but either way, it was fun to break. And yeah, I guess we'll go from there. Like always, week course add-ons, Twitch, Discord links down below if you want them. All for free for you guys. And always, again, like always, a massive shout out to my patrons for in the video. For all support on Patreon, like always, guys, thank you a million times. I really appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, should be a link up here, as well as down below in the description. And also the 10.2 Warlock spreadsheet. It's indeed alive on Patreon if you want it for early access to the tier 3 Veilguard rank or higher. Yeah, and links up here and down below if you want them. So my money's on time dilation probably getting hit a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, like, I would venture to guess that Blizz has sort of been aware of it working this way for a long time. I don't know if we have been overall, but I think a lot of it is also just embellishments sort of suck in 10.2, like raw damage wise. They're cool. like thematically, but I think they're just not incredibly strong when it comes to like damage. I mean, Shadow Flame is simming pretty high. Mastery 1, albeit sim bait, is simming pretty high. The highest one from 10.2 is like 3rd or 4th best, and like, you know, so there could be nerfs coming just as 4 cloak and things also again, but I don't know. We'll see where it goes. So yeah. All that being said, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.